And now that I've added Asmongold with my schizo ramblings, I had more schizo ramblings for you guys today. So Tigernog found this guy. I gotta go to my correct browser page here. Tigernog found this guy who's a Sweet Baby Inc. employee. And he retweeted some weird Antifa tactics here. A de-arrest primer. A de-arrest, aka an unarrest, is the act of freeing someone who has been seized by law enforcement officers. Often it's police that repress protests and make arrests, but federal agents like BORTAC, who were deployed in 2020, have done riot control and also have arresting powers. A de-arrest can look like physically removing an arrestee from LEO's grips, opening the door of a car, or pressuring LEOs to release an arrestee. Being arrested can have drastic negative life-altering effects, especially for targeted populations like people who aren't white, Muslims, LGBTQ people, and certain radicals. It follows, then, that reversing an arrest can be well worth the risks involved. There are many situations where a de-arrest is worth the risk, but please don't skip the consideration section at the end. The tactic 1, using a secure grip like the Gable grip that's illustrated above, hug the arrestee and pull them out of danger. You can also hug a person hugging the arrestee, as your grips should be strong enough that your efforts will still combine. Holding the arrestee around the torso or abdomen is preferred to grabbing limbs, as limbs are harder to get a grip on and can easily dislocate if 2 or more people are exerting force on them in opposing directions. It may be tempting to pull on a backpack or article of clothing, but most cloth tears easily, and backpacks that aren't secured by copious straps and buckles come loose with ease. Of the tactics presented here, this takes a medium level of risk. Pulling someone who's being snatched by LEOs away from them is more risky than simply pressuring officers to release the arrestee without physical contact with the arrestee. But it also doesn't require physical contact with officers like the next tactic, Tactic 2, does. And as you can see here, there's just a whole bunch of pages that they post. A whole bunch of pages about rescuing people who have been arrested. And I was like, that's interesting. This Sweet Baby guy doesn't seem to tweet too often. He retweeted Sega of America workers ratify union contract protecting 150 employees. What is this? A couple of slides from my GDC cultural specificity talk. When you prioritize team health and marginalized stories, short-term profits are going to take a back seat. You can still run a successful indie studio and focus on long-term viability. Wow. I wonder who's been saying that they're foregoing short-term profit and focusing on the long-term cultural victory for 9 months. I wonder who that could be. I wonder. Marginalized focused games don't make enough money under capitalism, not in the short term. The more specific we are, the more universal something can become. Life is in the details. If you generalize, it doesn't resonate. The specificity of it is what resonates. And I have more slides here. Is this a game only we can make? I'm pretty sure we read about thirsty suitors in one of my bridge dumps before. I like very much remember talking about thirsty suitors and reading an article about thirsty suitors. I just don't remember how we got there. I don't remember how we got to thirsty suitors, because it was a long time ago. It is possible. And they have thirsty suitors, Falcon Age, Chia, and Venba. I feel like we've seen Venba somewhere as well. Brent Wolfe, thank you for the 10. Do you want shilagas? Because that's how you get shilags. I don't know what a shilag is. Richard Alpha, thank you for the 2. This glow's brighter than me. Oh my god. Have they ever explained how short-term losses will eventually turn into profits? If you keep making short-term losses, they turn into long-term losses, if your math is correct. So basically, they're foregoing the short-term profit in the hopes that if they pump out enough of this crap, it doesn't matter if people our age get angry about it. It doesn't matter if people in the generation below us, only like a third of them accept it and the rest of them are angry about it. If they have enough of this inundated in TV and in movies and in video games and in books and just everywhere, and the next generation grows up with all of this ideology being pumped into them from kindergarten up, which is what some states have been fighting in the school system, the newest generation is going to be the modern audience that they keep talking about. The modern audience that doesn't exist and that most people keep wrongfully mocking them about. When they say the modern audience, it's funny because we know that audience doesn't exist. We know that there are no people buying their games or their movies or their TV shows. And that's why they keep losing money. But again, that is the foregoing short-term profit for long-term cultural victory. They're hoping that if there's enough inundation, the next generation will only know their ideology, and by that, they will have won. An overwhelming wave of propaganda? Yes. Don't forget, a lot of people will just get jaded and give up if they keep pushing. Yeah, some people will feel that way too. Brent Wolfe, thank you for the 10. Irish whooping stick? Oh, I want to see an Irish whooping stick. Concord was a big wake-up call to finance. They won't ignore ideology projects. Oh god, chat scroll. They won't ignore ideology projects after this, and Veilguard's impending failure to the tunes of hundreds of millions. Yes. Yes, this having Concord spend 400 million, I hope is a huge wake-up. I have no idea how much money has been lost in, like, the corporations like Jack Daniels, like Budweiser, like Harley Davidson, right? I don't know how much money these companies have lost, but at least in video games, we can get these figures from people on the inside who are willing to talk about it. But I was going to make games for the modern audience. Keep digging! Thank you for the 100 biddies. Cold acid. I probably have seen them before. It's pronounced shillelagh? Shillelagh? That doesn't sound familiar to me. A lot of Gamergate turned to cucks and now almost fight for the DEI side for a few in some vain attempt to shill for their alternative market that would be seen and boring in a healthier market. A BLX miss, thank you for the 5. The goal is to get rid of the good stuff, aka no physical media, edited remakes, and then there will only be the modern audience crap left. Which is, again, it makes sense why they're doing so many remakes, right? If they can do all of the remakes, and most people don't have physical media, everything is just online, why would people bother looking for the original when the remake is readily available and literally everywhere, right? If they remake things in their image, they are co-opting what good things used to be and pushing their ideology in the new one. How will they keep making propaganda if they lose 400 million every project? I'm hoping that these losses are adding up, right? I don't know how much money that companies like BlackRock and Vanguard have to spend on initiatives like this, which is why we'll probably see some of the smaller companies like Ubisoft just fucking shut down, right? They're probably not getting enough money from venture capital firms in order to keep going with these losses. But these are, I'm assuming, what ideologues would say, calculated losses, right? Not everyone is going to make it to the end when we usher in utopia, after all. This is what the, why the SH2 remake? I don't know what that is. A lot of Gamergate? No, those were random mouthpieces who never went hard into the why the ethics in journalism was fucked. They were always on the side. They were just publicly embarrassed to admit it. I'm just glad that enough people call out the journalists who try to talk about how Gamergate was like just a misogynistic hate campaign now. Right? Like, if enough people keep calling journalists liars and showing how they're lying, they won't be able to rewrite history. Which they even tried doing with the Sweet Baby Inc. stuff. The Sweet Baby Inc. employee was the one who started the harassment campaign, was the one who wanted to not only get Kabrutus's group taken down, but get Kabrutus's own personal Steam account taken down. They started the harassment. They were the bullies. And they wanted to lie to everyone and pretend that they were the victims. BlackRock is subsidized by the government. They have nigh unlimited access to taxpayer funds. This much is nothing. There's nothing, right? There's nothing tying Ubisoft to BlackRock, to my knowledge, right? So wherever Ubisoft is getting funding from, it's very noticeable that they're failing, right? It's very noticeable that they are losing. They are very quickly not going to be able to do much of anything. So it seems to me that Ubisoft might possibly end up collapsing. Like, there are going to be companies that go out of business because they don't have enough money to keep this fight going. I won't feel bad for those companies, right? They made their bet, they can lie in it. I don't want them to get saved by the government or any other kind of, like, grants or anything. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink has been confronted about the losses before, and some investors were talking about a lawsuit, you think, in March? Yep. Yep, there were some investors who were a little unhappy with the direction of these things. Dan the Man, thank you for the 200 biddies. Oh, thank you, thank you. Hot take, there shouldn't be too big to fail. If you fuck up, you ruin your stuff. I agree. I agree. Big companies shouldn't be able to ask governments for bailouts. What planet are these people on to aim a middle finger at the ones who buy their games? On an ideological planet where they are the good people in history and they're getting rid of the bad people in history. People keep covering up Brianna Wu running Chase off the road in a street race to determine who won Gamergate. What? I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. Hiring based on skill and merit works. Equity does not. Reading them had a lot less since Gamergate 1. Brock Sampson, thank you for the 10. Abolish the ATF. That's something I can get behind. That's something I can get behind. I don't know who Del Walker is. Del Walker says previous Naughty Dog, Rocksteady Games, Respawn, PlayStation, seen in Forbes, IGN, Tech Radar, GI Biz, and BBC. He's on the BAFTA committee for culture, tech, and entertainment. I don't know who this guy is. But he said, I was asked to do a podcast about why working in video games is the best thing to ever happen to me. I replied that becoming a father was the best thing to happen to me, and video games isn't even in the top 5. Then they blocked me. Gamers, please be normal. I feel like the first part of this is a very good response, right? I replied that becoming a father was the best thing to happen to me. That's good. That should be the response of anyone who has a child, right? That just makes sense. But if video games propelled your entire career and allowed you to do and afford everything you've done in your life, what do you mean by video games isn't even in the top 5? We want people who are passionate about games to be working on games. Right? So, if you've been given so many opportunities by working in the industry, shouldn't that be in your top list about why it's one of the best things that have happened? What is the Twitter handle of this person Kirsche is reading at the moment? The Cartel Dell, by the way. But these are all just retweets by the Sweet Baby Inc. person. He doesn't seem to actually make too many tweets himself. And we have a little excerpt here. Cameron Wild, credited on 6 games. Tales of Kenzara Zhao, he was a narrative consultation. Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, he was a writer. Alan Wake 2, narrative consultation. The Crew, Motorfest, proofreading. Kingdom 80s, additional writing. And God of War Ragnarok, it just says Sweet Baby Inc. It doesn't say what specifically he did. Daniel Sierra, thank you for the 11-month member. Is there a way for us to band together and build an alternative without it crumbling? As a game dev, you want to contribute to pushing back, it's tough. I mean, look at games like Pal World and like Crime Boss. They're fun, and it speaks for itself, basically. Buy things that are fun, play your backlog, ignore DEI crap. Bailey, thank you for the $25 doodles. Thank you! You are super duper mega cute and wonderful, my guy. Thank you! Thank you! They said they didn't write for Suicide Squad. Yeah, you know. And, he has a swap card here. Cameron Wild, a writer, narrative designer, sensitivity reader. Cameron Wild is a black, non-binary writer and sensitivity editor at Sweet Baby Inc. They've worked on titles including Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, Hyper Lightbreaker, as well as upcoming and unannounced projects from Compulsion, Insomniac, and Finji. They infuse all of their work with the spirit of gender diversity and black liberation. In their spare time, they make art, cuddle their dog, and dream of revolution. And then under contact details, that's a Sweet Baby website. And they have like a little is speaking at how to get away with murder, subverting genre expectations. And we'll get to that in a second. Because there's this old post here from 2020 where Co-op said, finally, we're so happy to have Cameron Wild on board as a writer on Goodbye Volcano High. We know a good fit when they name drop DS9 and Octavia Butler. And so they have the they-them pronoun picture. Favorite thing to watch during this quarantine year, Deep Space Nine, pretty young when it first aired. I remember thinking it was super dark and impossibly boring. I was so used to the colorful idealism of next gen that I'm older and move at a slower pace. I really appreciate it. There's some tropes that don't hold up too well, but I find the Star Trek universe very comforting, and they grapple with interesting themes like the power of ideology and cultural trauma. It's a great distraction from the outside world. Who do you look up to? I look up to anyone who is trying to meet life as it really is. That's a scary and sometimes deeply lonely thing to do. I admire my parents for being loving because of hardship rather than in spite of it, and I admire my friends for living way, way outside of the boxes that were assigned to them. I always feel like that's a hard question, honestly. When somebody asks, like, who do you look up to, or like, who is a not an idol, but like a, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember the word. That is a hard question to answer, though. In terms of writing, I'm a sci-fi fan. I love Octavia Butler. She was the first writer to really scare me. When I read Parable of the Sower, it was a horrific and clearly prophetic. I've come to realize that's just what she did. She ate the world, digested it, and then spat it out again in raw, insightful words. And because she was compassionate and imaginative, you're never left feeling truly hopeless. Her work always hints at exciting possibilities. I have no idea who Octavia Butler is. Link us to a fundraiser that still needs some coin. Taking What We Need is a grassroots effort to look after the needs of Black and Indigenous trans, feminine, and two-spirit people in Tiake, also called Montreal. Okay. Alright. Odds are it's more commie shit. My role model is myself. I'm never just... Role model is what I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you. And so, we have this video called How to Get Away with Murder, Subverting Genre Expectations, hashtag GDOC Expo. This has 122 views, and it was posted a year ago. Come with me, chat, on this journey. How to Get Away with Murder.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to attend or watch this talk, How to Get Away with Murder, Subverting Genre Expectations. My name is Cameron Wild, and I'm a narrative designer.
He's got the same, like, weird, crooked mouth that guy at the presidential debates had.
Designer and sensitivity reader with a company called Sweet Baby Inc., based out of so-called Montreal. These are some of my co-workers. We specialize in narrative development, which means working with teams on everything from script writing to narrative direction, casting, to cultural consultation. And we do it with a focus on inclusion, but also on creating joy through storytelling.
I found it!
So as for my own...
Oh, I found it. I'm wondering how nobody's found this video before. I can't remember seeing it. Like, maybe I'm, like, wicked fucking late, but I can't remember seeing anybody show this video off. Still can't believe the name Sweet Baby. It's so creepy. I like Kevin's little blobby Sweet Baby that he made. Wolfsbane, thank you for the $1.99. I'm not gonna read that.
Story. I took a really long and scenic route to my current role. I studied acting, I worked at the National Film Board of Canada, I toiled in data mines at a giant software company, and I even did 2 tours at film school, which is 2 more times than I would recommend anyone attend. But sometimes you only know you've made a mistake until after it's happened, and sometimes you only know once you've made it twice. But all of that taught me a lot about how to structure a story, what makes a story engaging, and maybe more importantly, how not to structure stories, which isn't to say that you ever really learn anything, but it's been helpful as I've started to really navigate through the games industry. Because the stories we tell each other are way more than entertainment. They're how we create, debate, and preserve our collective values and beliefs. And we can and should make better, more expansive, more representational content.
If you're going into a game trying to make it more representational content instead of just making a good game first and foremost, your game is not going to be good. Like, I genuinely don't understand this mindset, right? Like, I mean, I do, right? Because their most important thing is pushing their cultural revolution, even though they're going to lie to you and call you crazy for pointing it out. But it's just like, how do these people convince so many game companies, even with Kim Belair being like, strike fear into the marketing guys, that they're going to be canceled and people will hate them, right? Just make them think that they absolutely need you. Even with that, like, how are so many companies convinced that this is what they need? Right, like, it's insane to me.
Oh, cool, but why am I here? Well, I'm here because we're all game devs of color, even. And I think a lot of us, given our shared experiences, have seen how limited in scope and imagination entertainment can be.
I also want to point out, I'm sure he's going to get to it, but one of the points on his cool, so why am I here bulletin is burning the games industry to the ground.
Obviously, a big part of that is just the reality of working in a creative system that prioritizes capital over telling stories that truly entertain, enrich, and benefit people. But beyond that, there's also a large extent to which many of the people seeking to tell stories in games simply don't know how, which is fine. That's why we at Sweet Baby do what we do. But we hit a wall sometimes when it's not just that.
What do they mean that they want to tell a story in a game, but they don't know how? Like, how do you become game dev if you don't know how to game dev? What? It's always the ones that hate games, truly.
Creatives don't know how to tell a story well. It's that they want to tell a certain story, and a certain story that often they're unequipped to tell. And when I say unequipped to tell, I don't mean in terms of resourcing. I mean creative people or teams who want to tell a story they don't have the identity, perspective, experience, or empathy to tell. And
what? Is this what I don't know what they mean by this. Don't have the empathy to tell? Question mark? He means white? I mean, he probably just means white people. But it's still just like, what the heck? He also didn't address the point of wanting to burn the games industry to the ground, so I guess we're just left on our own to interpret that as we will. And again, from listening to Bridge for the last 9 months, we know that this isn't isolated to the gaming industry. This is an ideological push. And burning the game industry to the ground means just transforming it in their own image, putting their ideology first in the gaming industry, and removing all people that they feel do not belong there.
Who don't want to feel the discomfort that arises when they realize they've reached the limits of their abilities. I'm sure you've met many. People who are uncomfortable being told that not every story is theirs to own.
What did he mean by this? What did he mean by to stop people who are uncomfortable hearing that not every story is theirs to own? If you're a writer, you should be able to write complex characters that don't reflect your identity in real life. That is a quality of a good writer.
And I can sympathize. Any of us can sympathize with the experience of being uncomfortable or afraid. But I can't sympathize with the idea that discomfort is an acceptable reason not to do better. Because a lot of us who are really fighting for more inclusive games and storytelling don't have a choice when it comes to discomfort. A lot of us...
I get really tired of hearing the, like, fighting for more inclusivity in games, because nobody has ever cared when there have been minority characters in games. Nobody has ever cared when there have been gay characters or lesbian characters in games. Nobody has ever cared when there are, like, women main characters or well-written women side characters. All of us who like games just play the games. So when I hear fighting for inclusivity, I hear that unless there's a character in the game that acts and looks just like I do, I am incapable of playing and understanding and having fun with the game. And it just comes across as incredibly narcissistic and rather short-sighted.
Who are just existing don't have a choice. Which makes this really hard, often. But recently, I've started realizing that discomfort, or the place where whiteness doesn't have to live, is where some of the best stories are told. And it's where genre storytelling lives. So I call this talk How to Get Away with Murder.
To prove that space where whiteness doesn't have to live is where some of the best stories are told. I don't know what you mean by this, because anyone of any race can tell a good story. You don't have to remove white people. to have the best stories. I don't understand this sentence. So it's just racism with extra steps.
Because when you do genre well, it's about going deep into that well of discomfort and telling a story that has teeth and pushes boundaries and allows a kind of emotional resonance best described as visceral.
I feel like the irony here is that the more these people get into media, get into entertainment, and start co-opting things with their ideology, the less teeth, the less bite, the less visceral reactions people can have. Because they don't tell good stories when they're focusing on ideology first. They tell things that are bland, that are not fun, and that are preachy. And nobody likes that. And then you lose $400 million.
And these are the kind of stories that make me feel real. Okay. Now, when I talk about genre storytelling, what do I mean? I mean horror, sci-fi, fantasy, westerns, that kind of thing. And when I'm looking at media that relies heavily on tropes, cinematic conventions, and predetermined narrative arcs. And I know that's kind of a fuzzy definition of a fuzzy term, but that's also the point. It's that often you don't know genre until you feel it. And
no, I feel like I can recognize what genre something is from merely by looking at the cover art for it. Right, typically you can understand from the cover art what kind of game it's going to be. Sometimes you need to watch the trailer, but definitely after you watch the trailer, you know exactly what genre you're expecting. I don't know what they mean by this. I don't know what they mean. And also, when they're bringing up the genre thing here, and I'm sure they're pointing it at an inclusivity point, the movies that live completely rent-free in my head, right? The Shining. Main character is a man. I'm not a man.
Scratches, like I'm a real pet.
I could empathize with what that guy was going through in crazy mental breaks. I could understand that he was absolutely fucking insane, right? Like, it was a viscerally scary movie, especially for me when I was younger. And if you want to be like, but Kirsche, those were white people, so you could still identify with them. I watched Ring You, the Japanese The Ring. That movie also lives rent-free in my head. I went years not being able to hear TV static without jumping. Alright, I still get creeped out by TV static. Alright? That was a movie filled with Japanese people that I had to read in subtitles when I was younger. Alright, okay? That movie was absolutely terrifying. I'm certain that I felt that despite the lack of white people in the movie. The guy who saved them in The Shining is black. True? True. Hey, is that TV static? Fuck you, buddy. The Professor Keen, they give the 10. They will not win the end due to 3 things. They're incompetent. 2, they can't erase the past. 3, people like you are standing up to them, exposing them, and pushing back. They cannot win in the end. That's the hope. That's the hope. I don't want to think about a future in which these people win, because that is a terrifying dystopian future that I would rather not live in. So I hope that all 3 of your points are true and will come to pass. The second one, though, you gotta activate your almonds a little bit and wonder why everyone in the history books is always the winner, right? Why do the good guys always win, as it were? Oh no, you're thinking about Ju-on. Why do all the freak shows make everything into a spectrum? I don't really know, right? Like, I guess genre could be a spectrum, right? Because you can have, like, horror comedy and, like, sci-fi horror, fantasy horror, etc., right? So, like, that kind of unironically does exist on a spectrum. Kirsche's starting screen is her coming out of a static TV and she's scared of TV static? I know. Where do you think I got the thought from, chat? Combining Japanese horror with my yandere personality? Come on now. That's terrifying. Crepe or weirdo, they give it to him. But Foxu, Asians are white, didn't you know? Honorary.
And as such, some of the most resonant experiences for me of seeing myself on screen and feeling really accurately perceived has been through genre cinema. For example, I don't think that I've ever had a theater going experience like the one I had when I saw Get Out. And I know it took me just like a couple of minutes to mention Get Out. I think we all knew it had to happen.
Why?
I love Jordan Peele. I think he is one of the only people who has made a film that has been successful with all different kinds of audiences, and has also, I think, really faithfully represented something fundamental about racial trauma. The reason why he's able to put Chris Washington, played by Daniel Kaluuya, through so much shit in Get Out is because through the manipulation of genre, Peele signals to us that he values Chris as a character and as a representation of a Black experience. But Get Out's not my favorite film, because I have to tell you that my favorite...
Are we gonna have like some sort of representation film in the future that goes through the cycles of like gentrification and white flight? Are we gonna have one of those? Like what do they mean by this? You think this person wouldn't understand Get Out's theme? When you watch the Kirsche show, it really resonates with me, and I'm not a brain-damaged white fox who... I'm thinking of more horror things in my head. A Tale of Two Sisters. A Tale of Two Sisters is a Korean horror about, like, little girl twins. That was a fucking horrifying movie as well. I just enjoyed the story being presented to me, and I thought about the lives and the characters that were being created in the movie. Because I can think outside of myself. I don't need to see, like, myself in a movie in order to enjoy it. I don't understand. I don't understand. Eli Clary, thank you for the 10. Foxu, do you support Conor McGregor's bid for the presidency in Ireland next year? I mean, I hope he does well. He seems like he loves his country. I'm not Irish, so I can't vote for him. But I can watch it and hope he does well.
Favorite film is, maybe of all time, is a comedy called Blazing Saddles, which I think often catches people off guard. And it would also probably catch them off guard if they knew it was my parents' favorite film. Because my parents grew up in the US in a time when they weren't allowed to eat in diners with their white friends. But the reason I love it is that beyond some truly classic Mel...
I don't know how old he is. When did like that kind of segregation even end? I'm not good at dates, chat. Have I tried the game Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons? I have not. I have not. He just missed the point of Blazing Saddles. I've never... I mean, I might have seen Blazing Saddles when I was young, but I definitely don't fucking remember it. I remember nothing of Blazing Saddles. The 60s? Okay. How old are his parents? Blazing Saddles is extremely aware of social inequity and finds humor in that darkness. Brooks made sure the jokes came at the expense of whiteness and chipped away at an absurd social hierarchy. It isn't respectful, it's offensive, but it offends the right people. I think that last sentence is very telling. You're allowed to be offensive as long as it's towards the right people, which is why that VTuber prostitute is allowed to call me an idiot, and that's not ableist. But if people call him a retard, that's harassment and that's baseless attacks. You know?
Seeing slapstick humor and fart jokes, Blazing Saddles is extremely aware of social inequality and finds its humor in that darkness, which means I can laugh in a way...
Mel Brooks literally makes fun of everybody and apes the genre of the Western in the satire. This guy's a moron. Well, I mean, yeah. It's very obvious.
That is cathartic. It's a movie that isn't making jokes about me, but for me. And I think that's really awesome. Because... But
why should you be protected from having jokes made about you, right? Like, if the movie does offend the right people, but then occasionally makes jokes about your identity, whatever you identify as, why would that be a bad thing? Why is that bad? Why should you get special privileges where you are not allowed to be made fun of? And not like you as a human being, as an individual, but like you as in the things you identify as, right? I'm not saying him specifically, but like him as in his identities, to be very clear. Any discomfort is racist, of course. It literally makes jokes about black people being grapists. I wish I knew more about the movie so I could give a better commentary on this part.
You can tell just in the text, but it's also a fact, that Brooks worked with Black writers to make sure the jokes came at the expense of whiteness and chipped away at an absurd social hierarchy.
Wait, hold on. He said that he worked with Black artists, but Umbre, you said Blazing Saddles written by 3 white men. So who are the Black writers that he worked with in order to ensure that the jokes chipped away at whiteness and not anybody else? He's never watched the movie. Blazing Saddles was written by Richard Pryor as well. Oh, he's a good comedian. I know that guy. That's a name I recognize. He made it up. All right. Richard Pryor, man. Blazing Saddles, written by Richard Pryor. Hell yeah. He missed the whole point of the movie. What are we watching and laughing at today? Sweet Baby Inc. To quote South Park, either all comedy is on the table or none of it is. That is exactly how it should be, right? It's just like when we watched that trailer for A Harp and Me, or whatever, from, what's his face, that one comedian that's not funny. He was an anchor man. I can't remember his name. I'm so bad at names, chat. You'd mention your favorite Pryor album, but you can't say the title. Will Ferrell, thank you, chat. Yeah, Will Ferrell, where they make jokes at the expense of women, and in the same breath say that they can't do jokes in drag anymore because that is offensive. That Will has become, you know, an educated person, and that he knows jokes in drag are too offensive to be done in current year. But it's okay to make jokes at the expense of women, in his mind. So it's just like, these people make these strange, arbitrary rules to give certain classes of people special privileges. And it's just like, why do you do that? Yeah, agreed. There should be no sacred cows in true comedy. Everything should be able to be made fun of. Imagine doing coke with 70s Richard Pryor. Yeah, and the majority of comedy, right, they aren't making fun of a specific person. Like, nobody's going to bring up, I already forgot the guy's name that we're watching, Cameron. Nobody's going to bring up Cameron in, like, a TV show or a movie and specifically make fun of him exactly. But they're going to make jokes about gay people or about black people or about non-binary people, because those are things that shouldn't be protected classes. Everything should be able to be okay. You miss pre-sellout George Carlin. He hammered everybody and it was brilliant. Yeah. The Wyan brothers who made the Scary Movie series know how to poke fun of white people and make it knee-slapping funny. Yeah, like, everyone should be on the table. Means don't understand comedy if he doesn't get that comedy is never respectful.
It's deliberately and unexpectedly maybe a narrative that contributes to the liberation of people like me. It isn't respectful. It's offensive. Yeah, but it offends the right people, which is, to me, the point of truly incisive, intentional genre work.
So, look at that smug-ass face. The point of intentional genre work is to offend the right people. If you're making a game and you're putting ideology first over making a good game, and your whole view around making something revolves around offending the right people first, everything you make is going to be shit. You're not going to make anything of value.
Which brings me back to the aim of this talk. So in my work in narrative, we're often tasked with quote-unquote sensitivity reading, a term we frankly don't really love because despite its huge importance, sensitivity reading is often seen as reductive and flattening. In the most frustrating cases, I know that I, a Black non-binary person, is going to be seen as someone looking to reduce quote-unquote offense, basically a buzz killer. They assume that I'm going to want...
You just spent the first 8 minutes of this video saying exactly that. What do you mean?
Less violence, less discomfort, or some kind of coddled, boring, or nice story, when actually it's really the opposite. The purpose of sensitivity work is not to tell easy stories or boring stories. It's to tell stories that resonate.
Hold on, I gotta go back like a second here. You can tell how blind someone is by how magnified things are when their glasses are off the side of their face. Damn, he is blind. I got so distracted. I was like, hot damn, I can't see shit through his glasses frame.
Work is not to tell easy stories or boring
You
stories.
for real,
It's
for
to
real,
tell stories
true.
that resonate, that fire people up and excite them, take them on journeys. It's to ensure that we tell stories that are big and loud and scary and subversive, but that we do so with authenticity.
Hold on, did you catch that, chat? Did you catch that?
Fire people up and excite them, take them on journeys. It's to ensure that we tell stories that are big and loud and scary and subversive, but
Tell the stories that are subversive, eh? Eh?
that we do so with authenticity and that we get to the heart of an audience. Because ultimately, if you're telling a story that misses its audience, that doesn't ring true, or that fails to cut in the right direction, the problem isn't that it's just insensitive. The problem is it's bad.
What?
Like a film called Django Unchained.
What?
So I'm gonna take a moment to pause and offer an apology.
Is this apology gonna be about Django Unchained? I don't that was out of left field. What? Django Unchained is an awesome movie, fuck you, but didn't that show, like, unabashed, like, the suffering and horrid treatment that slaves went through? Like, wasn't that, like, actually a visceral movie? Am I crazy? It was horrible. Oh my god. Yeah, it did. Jesus Christ.
This isn't the talk that I pitched. Which isn't to say anyone should panic. But it's that when I wrote up my outline, I had a whole plan that I was going to take Nope and Get Out and approach this by talking about horror and the ways Jordan Peele and others have really nailed it, alongside a few examples of how movies like Django Unchained have fallen short. If you haven't seen Django Unchained, I guess, like, congratulations to you.
I was gonna say, is he gonna explain?
But it's about an enslaved black man played by Jamie Foxx, rescued from slavery by a white bounty hunter played by Christoph Waltz. And through the course of the film, he learns, I don't know, some stuff, I guess. And then he ostensibly gets his revenge on white supremacy or whatever. Which on paper sounds like a premise that could make for maybe some brilliant genre storytelling. And I'm sure many people...
What an analysis! Not biased at all.
You know, in particular, feel like it's a liberatory masterwork. But when I sat down to rewatch it, I realized how boring it is. And not only boring, but it's a perfect example of what not to do with genre. So...
What?
I'm sorry, because I will talk about how to do it right. But before that, I'm going to have to talk about how Django Unchained and Quentin Tarantino, in particular, get it so wrong.
This seems really insane to me. Like, literal fucking Who seems critically acclaimed movie that was universally, like, loved for the way that it not attacked, but, like, showcased really difficult material. And he's like, no, I could do that better. This was crap. What the heck? It's okay because he's punching up. Oh, what the hell? What the hell? It's entirely because Quentin isn't black. I guess we'll find out.
Because in my work, I meet a lot of Tarantinos. These are people who say, I want this to be gritty, dark, or edgy. And they have this obsession with edginess. Sort of a context-free version of art is supposed to make people uncomfortable. As an auteur, Quentin Tarantino feels like someone who grasps after edginess when they don't really have any human tragedy to explore the depths of. They don't understand that growth comes from trauma, sure, but...
What kind of trauma does this guy have? What, he's saying that Quentin Tarantino can't write a real gritty movie because Quentin Tarantino doesn't have a traumatic past? Like, what? The majority of these strange ideologues who are promoting this crazy cultural shift also haven't had to face any kind of trauma. Like, what does he mean by this? Someone made fun of him once. I was like, maybe I do need to sell the rights to my life story to someone to make like a immersive VR game out of. We can take all these crazy ideologues and put them in the growing up as baby Kirsche story and see if they can survive it.
Also comes from joy. He holds a no pain, no gain kind of mentality that I think is unshakably rooted in white supremacist patriarchal values.
Wait, what was he? Hold on. Let's...
Sort of a context-free version of art is supposed to make people uncomfortable. As an auteur, Quentin Tarantino feels like someone who grasps after edginess when they don't really have any human tragedy to explore the depths of. They don't understand that growth comes from trauma, sure, but it also comes from joy. He holds a no pain, no gain kind of mentality that I think is unshakably rooted in white supremacist patriarchal values.
So he was originally saying that he feels like Tarantino has no trauma to be able to write from, but that also you can write from a place of joy. But that also Quentin Tarantino has the no pain, no gain mentality, and that's bad. I'm a little confused. Maybe I'm low IQ right now, but I'm a little confused. The auteur. No pain, no gain is patriarchal. These people are so lazy and insane.
And in that, we come to the first lesson Django teaches us about genre. If you want to be edgy, realize that it's meaningless unless you yourself are taking risks.
Wait.
If you are...
Did he not read the quote?
Patriarchal.
Death of the Edgelord, when the black critics came out with savage think pieces about Django, I couldn't have cared less. If people don't like my movies, they don't like my movies, and if they don't get it, it doesn't matter. I don't care what black people think is kinda suspicious coming from a guy who gathers them to him all the time. Is he trying to say Quentin Tarantino gathers black people? Like, he specifically tries to gather black people around him? Like, what kind of weird accusation is that? And also, I kind of want to know where this quote is from. Let me see if I can find this really quick and see how out of context it's taken. When the black critics came out with savage think pieces, Quentin Tarantino tells black critics his race is irrelevant. Okay, so this is from... What year was this? October 13th, 2015? Quentin Tarantino tells black critics his race is irrelevant. Pulp Fiction director frequently criticized for using the N-word in his scripts says he's being made out to be a supervillain. Quentin Tarantino has hit out at critics in black culture who have repeatedly taken him to task over the course of his career ahead of the release of his new film, The Hateful Eight. In a high-profile interview with the novelist and screenwriter Bret Easton Ellis in the New York Times, the Oscar-winning filmmaker acknowledged attacks from African-American peers over his last film, the race-themed western Django Unchained, but questioned why the color of his skin should affect the movies he makes. If you've made money being a critic in black culture in the last 20 years, you have to deal with me, said Tarantino. You must have an opinion of me. You must deal with what I'm saying and deal with the consequences. If you sift through the criticism, you'll see it's pretty evenly divided between pros and cons, continued the director, whose bloodthirsty yet darkly comic version of the antebellum South met with controversy over its depiction of slavery, and liberal use of the N-word. That's how things were back then, though. Like, if you're going to accurately depict, even if it's like a comedic version of what once was, if you're going to try and have any accuracy, that's just how things were back then. Yeah, the slavery and liberal, by the way. But when the black critics came out with savage think pieces about Django, I couldn't have cared less. If people don't like my movies, they don't like my movies. And if they don't get it, it doesn't matter. The Pulp Fiction director has caused controversy throughout his career for using the N-word, and Tarantino questioned why he was singled out for criticism. The bad taste that was left in my mouth had to do with this. It's been a long time since the subject of a writer's skin was mentioned as often as mine. You wouldn't think the color of a writer's skin should have any effect on the words themselves. It's a lot of the more ugly pieces. My motives were really brought to bear in the most negative way. It's like I'm some supervillain coming up with this stuff. In the wake of Django Unchained's release in 2013, director Spike Lee tweeted, "American slavery was not a Sergio Leone spaghetti western. It was a holocaust. My ancestors are slaves stolen from Africa. I will honor them." Wait, Spike Lee? Like, the guy that made one of those TV networks? Wasn't there like a Spike TV? Am I crazy? Is that the same guy? Is that the same guy? Spike Lee has never made a good film. Sold from Africa, not stolen? Yeah, true. Yeah, sold from Africa. However, Tarantino was defended by black filmmaker Antoine Fuqua, who said he did not believe Tarantino had a racist bone in his body, and Django star Jamie Foxx called Lee's comments irresponsible. Jamie Foxx fucking nailed it in that movie as well. History is fun, isn't it, chat? Spike TV was just USA Network renamed. Oh, okay. Had nothing to do with the Spike Lee guy. Okay, alright. Spike Lee also hated James L. Jones for defending blackface in a film. It just seems like, by the way that Sweet Baby guy was saying Tarantino gathers black people around him, it seems like he's implying that Tarantino is an incredible racist, but he makes sure he surrounds himself with black people who will be defensive of him, as it were. He's just using them to make his image better. Tarantino also briefly addressed the controversy over the civil rights drama Selma's omission from the 2015 Oscars, praising Ava DuVernay's Martin Luther King biopic, but suggesting it might have worked better on television. She did a really good job on Selma, but Selma deserved an Emmy, he said. In other Tarantino news, the filmmaker has revealed he has cut 2 different versions of The Hateful Eight. I don't think we really need to care about The Hateful Eight. That wasn't what I brought up here for. So yeah. I mean, like, usually when people are like, if you don't like it, it's not made for you. Typically, right, that they're usually facing some sort of, like, regular criticism. But it's like, if people are just gonna take issue with the color of your skin and the way you tell a story about something that historically happened, especially when you're telling a comedy but still trying to be respectful of the time period and of what happened during that time period, that doesn't really seem like it's legitimate criticism. It just seems like they're angry that he was white. Guessing it's a gritty reboot of The Magnificent Seven. And she has so many quirks. Asmund should really be more into the foxy cat. Look, alright. Better not forget to look at art today. I'll try my bestest. I'll try my best. And let me get back to the Shweer Babu guy. Let me see where we were here. About halfway through his video, almost.
Historical values. And in that, we come to the first lesson. Django teaches us about genre.
I'm gonna read this just in case he doesn't. If you want to be edgy, realize that it's meaningless unless you, yourself, are taking risks. If you're a person with power and privilege, you're only taking a risk if you're challenging the structures that gave you that power and privilege in the first place. Oh, that's true. That's true. Quentin Tarantino didn't work for his position. You know, he just kind of... He's white, so he just kind of fell into it. You know, that's how that works.
If you want to be edgy, realize that it's meaningless unless you yourself are taking risks. If you are a person with power and privilege, you're only taking a risk if you're challenging the structures that gave you that power and privilege in the first place. By creating Django Unchained, Tarantino has challenged nothing about himself.
Well, I would feel like based on all of the criticism about his skin color, I would say he was challenging something, was he not?
Lesson 1. Good genre starts with representation on the creative team. The foundations of the project must...
Good genre starts with representation on the creative team. If your team isn't diverse, you can't tell a good story. What a wild thing to say.
Be solid. Genre is incompatible with the death of the author. In Tarantino's case, the man seems to thrive on people hating him, and so I don't hate him. But
I don't think he thrives on people hating him. I think he's just used to it at this point in his career. I think he's just used to people hating him for crazy reasons, which, if you're going to gain any kind of public platform, whether you be an actor or a singer or a director or a content creator, there are going to be people that create crazy straw men of you and hate you based on what they think you are in their head. Help.
I do think his work needs to be critiqued out of existence, and that
I don't hate him. I just think his work needs to be critiqued out of existence. Might I remind you, Chad, the beginning of his slides said that one of his goals was to burn the game industry to the ground. Very interesting connections.
Specifically has to be addressed in any discussion of that work. Because Tarantino is capable of genre filmmaking, but the genre he's chosen with Django is blaxploitation. And why? I have my own pet theories, personally.
I have a question, chat. I have a question. Are blaxploitation films typically... I've seen only a couple of blaxploitation films. Right? Like Blackula, we watched that in high school. Are blaxploitation films, like, typically made by white people? I always thought, right? Like, they were genre made specifically for, like, black audience consumption. Am I high? Do I have this wrong? I'm asking genuinely. Like, this is a genuine question. Old blaxploitation movies were usually funny, though. Yeah, they were good movies. I liked them. Undercover Brother count? Yeah, fucking Black Dynamite, dude. They were by black people for black people. That was how I understood it. Right? That was how I understood what blaxploitation was. But I could be wrong. Schrodinger's White's Soul Plane. Is this absolutely nobody non-binary giving notes on how, or to an Oscar-winning director? Is that happening right now? Are you taking crazy pills? No, that's what's happening right now. That's exactly what's happening. Well, who was the Boondocks made for? You thought it was for everyone? Well, yeah, right, but, like, these, from my perspective, right, when I hear, like, the blaxploitation genre, I thought, like, these were movies made by, like, black directors and black artists and black writers, and they were telling stories that they wanted to tell, right? Something like the Boondocks, yeah, it's for everyone, but it's called, I don't know if Boondocks is called it, but, like, Blackula, again, a good example, Soul Plane, were called blaxploitation. They're made by black people as a parody of how white directors would pander to black people. Oh, thank you. It's satire. Satire's made for everyone. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I'm probably not explaining myself well, because this is not something that I know the definition of very well. Boondocks is pretty much made as a critique of the black community. Yeah, but it was written by black people. Right? So it's like, I don't understand how he's like, Quentin Tarantino, this white man, is making blaxploitation, because wouldn't, under that definition, it wouldn't be, right? Specifically for that reason. For example, Black Dynamite was directed by Scott Sanders, a black man. Black and white people worked on the Boondocks. Oh yeah, I'm not saying that there were no white people at all that worked on it, but, like, the writers, I thought, were black people. You love Black Dynamite, especially the Mr. Rogers episode. Yeah, Black Dynamite was fucking cash, dude. You love the blaxploitation parodies they had in Mad TV. So people didn't get the point of the blaxploitation movies? I guess not. I guess not. Mandingo is considered blaxploitation and was definitely directed and produced by a white guy to take advantage of black anger over slavery. Okay. So there are instances of, like, white people making blaxploitation movies. Okay. All right. It's a lot of it was just to directly appeal to a black audience, nothing more. I mean, again, satire is made for everyone, right? So I don't think people who were making, like, it was a critique of both black and white community. It doesn't pull any punches on either side of the debate, and it made a fantastic representation of culture. Yeah, I can't think of a single blaxploitation film or TV show that I've consumed that I didn't like. Like, they were just funny. They were just funny. So the guy wants segregation in film, you're lost? I don't know. I don't know. You don't think he knows what blaxploitation is? Probably for different reasons. It's just a specific type under the exploitation film genre. I mean, maybe. Maybe. I mean, I'm glad you guys gave me more definitions here, because, again, I just thought it was like, they were satire films, and they were made by, like, written by black people, and it was to showcase, like, satire in how black people were portrayed in films. But I was like, I thought they were always written by black people, but I guess you guys corrected me. They're sometimes written by white dudes. Guy acts like he was having his ass whipped for him in his teens. Don't forget all the Wizard of Oz movies with Richard Pryor. True. True. By the way, to answer Kirsche's earlier question about the weird smile on the debate, it's a variant of the liar's smirk. I mean, people said that the guy in the debate had, like, a neurological disease or something, which, like, caused his mouth to be that way. But, like, this guy isn't as, like, extreme on the mouth. So maybe this is the liar's smirk. Dude wants the same thing all the people like him want, a revolution, and that results in him personally taking power afterwards. True. True. When is someone gonna make a movie where Stalin and Hitler are black? I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet, honestly.
I think that it's the same thing we see with any non-black creator who thinks that black people are cool, but can't really examine the covetous nature of their feelings or their own...
What do you mean by finding black people cool, but don't understand the covetous nature of their feelings? Are you saying that sometimes people see black people as, like, collectible toys or animals? I mean, maybe like the people who say we can't have voter ID because black people don't know how to get an ID. I mean, maybe like those people. I don't know.
Role in black stories. People who in life met a black person that they either wanted to follow, fuck, or befriend,
what?
And never resolved it.
What? I don't understand. What does he mean by this?
The equivalent of a boy pulling a little girl's pigtails, but it's a white filmmaker in black pain.
What?
So lesson 2. To make good...
I feel like my brain has just been tasered. Oh, like it's all envious. It's all envy of black people. What? This boy is narcissistic as fuck. He's stuck his dick in his own mouth right now. Clearly, dude.
Genre, the emotion of the story and the challenges of it must be known to the author, or else whatever emerges.
Follow, fuck, or befriend. This is a weird way to play fuck, marry, kill. Honestly.
From it will be empty. All flash and gore and no substance. But for the people watching today, that's rarely the problem, right? We're the people who probably said those first 2 things or fought for them. So with those 2 lessons established outside of the story, then I want to dive into the meat of it. No more premeditation. It's time to do a murder.
Okay, I'm ready
Assuming
for murder.
That you are the right storyteller.
Not white.
You're in the room, and that you're looking down the barrel of a narrative project you want to turn into a throat-ripping genre story. We can now go back to our 3 pillars of genre: identity, text and tropes, and power. So coming in from the outside, identity matters in the story as much as it does out. In Django Unchained, it's clear in many ways that we're not meant to identify with Django, but to watch him. The point of view character feels as though it's Schultz. We see this in Schultz getting the best lines, the most direct and meaningful confrontations with the main villain, the best, coolest, and most meaningful death, and also the moral high ground. Because
that's incredibly crazy if you can watch Django Unchained and you're just like, yeah, we're not meant to identify anything with Django. We're not you don't really feel anything for this character. What the fuck? What the fuck? What am I listening to? Who has the best lines is subjective. Django has some fire lines. Yeah, right? Like what did he want this to be exactly? 3-dimensionally thinking is an anathema to ideologues. They're incapable of multifaceted thinking. It is the church of modern day and ultimately destined to be pawns. Yeah, unfortunately. The more he talks about Django, the more you doubt he even watched it. We're clearly meant to identify with and feel with Django. Yeah, it's like, well, I don't understand. How could he say this? Anathema? Yeah, anathema. Anathema. How much Delulu does this guy have? Literally all of it.
Whereas Django comes to his rebellion due to his own personal suffering, Schultz gets to pontificate about right and wrong as a means to prove that he's an evolved man. And it results in a movie called Django Unchained, where the titular character never actually feels unleashed. He never goes off the chain. Instead, he is literally and flatly unchained by a white man named Dr. King. I'm just going to leave that one alone. But I think
how dare a white man have the last name King? How dare he? Is this guy serious? Also, they do realize that it wasn't only other black people helping slaves escape, right? Like, that's an important story that absolutely should be told and is told. But there were white people who helped black people escape slavery. Those existed. This isn't like some fantastical storytelling that wasn't rooted in reality. King is his first name, King Schultz. Well, that's weird. Nobody has the first name King. This video's killing my brain cells. You wanna call? Oh, don't do that, you fool. It's meant to be a narrator of sorts for the audience. No, you can't have narrators.
It should be obvious why I think that was a terrible idea. In this way, Tarantino fails again, I think, and we have to look to a winner to learn the lesson why. Yeah, it's Blazing Saddles. So, which I want to use to illustrate the next lesson. In good genre, the identity of your characters, specifically your heroes, has to define their challenges in the narrative, but it also has to define their triumphs. Blazing Saddles does this by allowing Sheriff Bart's unique perspective, hard-won by being exactly who he is.
He outsmarts all the villains at the end when they sell him to be worked to death, comes back, kills everyone, then rescues his wife. This is really annoying. Yeah, right? Yeah, right?
Is to save the day. And much like Django, it presents some unpleasant realities, but it subverts them and allows its black characters to come out on top in the narrative, even if they don't necessarily always come out on top in the story.
I didn't even notice you beat it.
This is cringe. Can we watch the first anti-woke dog? I mean, we might need a palate cleanser after this. This is fucking insane ranting, dude. These are the people wanting to be hired as consultants to ruin your video games.
It's why Mel Brooks can play with a laundry list of otherwise offensive material. Characters who say the N-word, and a Klan rally in which both of the heroes participate, to name just a few. And when I talk about the difference between narrative and story, I mean that a story can end, for example, with a character who is broke but happy. And while we understand that in the story it's not great to be broke, we can still leave it joyously because we understand through the narrative that money isn't what the character needed. Which brings me to texts and tropes. Because to really do genre right, you need to be able to convey both narrative and story through the tropes you're employing. The aesthetic form and the conventions of the genre you're working in. Every genre has a history and a canon, a collection of references and narrative structures that make it what it is. That's why a space opera feels like a space opera, because there are bits and pieces that resonate with our understanding of genre convention. Django claims to be a Western and a blaxploitation film, but doesn't really succeed.
A space opera is just an opera set in space. What do you mean by Django claims to be a Western and blaxploitation, but fails at both? Is it not a comedy? Is it not a satire? Is it also not set in a Western situation? Like, what does he mean by this? A girl guard, thank you for the 2. Can we play Dustbin? It would be less painful. He spelled blaxploitation with an X. He did.
He did either. Django fails to fulfill the role of a hero, or even a tortured hero, like the ones well established, like Clint Eastwood.
I would say he does not fail as a tortured hero. What? I'm so confused. I'm so confused.
And Django is never fully allowed to revel in his own capacity for violence the way that you would expect of a blaxploitation film.
But he kills everyone. What do you mean?
Yeah, he blows some people away, but only after he's given permission by Schultz's heroic act. At the end of the film, we don't get either a
Oh
commentary on
my
the simplistic
god.
morality of westerns and blaxploitation, or a satisfying rendering of justice.
Chat, you don't understand. He didn't kill people until he got permission from the white man to kill people. So he's not really a hero.
Yes, Django finds his wife, and she rides silently, I might add, by his side off into the night. But what he needed was to find his people. And at every turn, instead, he left them in despair to fend for themselves, or shot them, or had them killed while he watched. To recognize that Tarantino isn't really delivering on the genre he claims, we can look at Blazing Saddles again.
Oh, okay.
Blazing Saddles is also doing double genre duty as a Western.
Blazing Saddles would never! Good genre understands that it earns its freedom from knowing its boundaries, and it uses its aesthetic language to honor, reference, and subvert convention.
And a comedy. And obviously, you know, it's Mel Brooks, so the comedy is on point. But what often gets ignored is that it's also a really solid Western. It features a classic love story between a lonesome cowboy and his sidekick, but where historically the casting would have been reversed, in Blazing Saddles, Gene Wilder's character is playing support class perfectly, using his whiteness as a shield and a decoy when necessary, but never for personal gain over Bart.
So you see a good supporting character as a person who is white, who uses their whiteness as a shield for the main black character? I feel like that would be very boring.
I need you to bend over so I can spank you.
I feel like that would be very boring if every single film was like the white character was like, excuse me, you're being very microaggressive right now. Like, what did they mean by this? Brokeback Mountain is the only real Western.
It also uses the trope of the ignorant townsfolk to lampoon racists. Not, and this is important, racism itself, but the people and mentality behind it. And although the words aren't made overt, it tells us that there's quote unquote a new sheriff in town. And I believe that meta commentary is intentional. The new Sheriff Bart is black. And so I believe Mel Brooks was saying is part of our future. Not exclusively, but meaningfully enough to make this film still feel relevant and subversive today.
What does he mean by Mel Brooks made the sheriff black, and thus he was making commentary on black people's future? What did you mean by this, sweet Babu employee?
And so in that way, I think it honors its genres more than a film that otherwise feels like it's doing genre cosplay. So good genre understands that it earns its freedom from knowing its boundaries, and it uses its aesthetic language to honor, reference, and subvert context. Good genre understands that it earns its freedom from knowing its boundaries, and it uses its aesthetic language to honor, reference, and subvert convention.
You're gonna watch Django after stream? Yeah, maybe we should have a fucking Django Unchained watch-along after stream, dude. What the fuck?
And tropes are key. Now the final piece, maybe the biggest failing of Django Unchained as a genre film, is power. And I'll get to the lesson early, because good genre must consider its relationship to power. That is true of horror, science fiction.
Tarantino hasn't earned the right to laugh. Earned the right to laugh. What the actual fuck am I reading? These people are lunatics!
Superhero movies, and it's incredibly true of blaxploitation films, and more granularly of a subgenre, a cursed subgenre within blaxploitation called slavesploitation, which honestly sucks to even have to say, but it is what Django Unchained both aims and claims to be. And so it nails the exploitation, providing graphic imagery, brutal violence, and gore, but it fails to be about blackness or about slavery because it wants to point at the wrong thing.
Django Unchained fails to be about slavery. Bro, what dimension is this man living in? The propagandized mind is a fascinating thing to behold.
In a scene where the KKK are shown to be a crew of bumbling idiots, we get a feeling that Tarantino is almost there and capable of some genuinely good comedy. But even in reducing such an iconic avatar of racism to a bunch of fools, we're made to feel that racism itself feels silly to Tarantino. But he hasn't earned the right.
What?
Django Unchained treats racism and slavery as that silly little thing we did in the 19th century. Even its plantation-owning villain, Calvin Candy, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, feels custom-built to resonate rather than disgust. And I don't mean charm. A charming, deeply racist villain is a great character because often the face of racism is charming. We should feel taken in because that is what power does.
He refused to believe he watched the movie. This guy is a clown. That's pretty much where I'm at. That's pretty much where I'm at. How dare you make the KKK bumbling idiots? Like, yeah, sure, it was a serious thing, but this movie is also being partially comedy. It's like these are like the people who get mad when you tell Hitler jokes, and it's like, yes, we should make fun of Hitler because he was a ridiculous person. This boy thinks he's very charming because of his own racism. Does this video even allow for comments? I think they're turned on, but there's only one comment. Please do not put comments on this video. Please do not make comments on this video. Do not go tip the cows, chat. Do not touch the poo, as it were. Whenever I cover people on this channel, I expect you to be at least respectful enough to not engage with the people I talk about. Because if you go and engage, they can then claim that I am sending people to harass them. That is not what I'm doing. That is not what I want you to do. Do not engage with these people.
But the structural disempowerment of slavery should have been sufficient to carry the notion of upending power in the story. Everything Django does should be about allowing him to earn what Candy has so he can take him out. But he's never given.
He just said he resonates with Calvin Candy, the villain designed to resonate with. He can't identify with Django, just the villain. What a weird thing to say.
He's never raised to that level of ability or importance. Instead, he waits for a white man to get there first, time and time again. Which is to say nothing of the hatred he shows for his own people the moment that he gains power over them. A hatred that is obviously rooted in white supremacy.
Whew.
So the perspective of who is the hero, where power sits in the world, and how our choices affect our power is totally blurred. And so I would argue everything about power in Django Unchained is wrong. In which case, what's the point? What's the point of making a film like that? And this is where some of the hardest conversations I have at my job exist. Arguably, this movie should never have existed, because
Django Unchained should have never existed. What a wild take to have. What a wild take. The fact that Django Unchained shows a modicum of nuance that barely touches the surface of racism and slavery is 10,000 leagues deep compared to this guy who has about as much depth as spilled milk. True and real. True and real. Django is shown to not only be an equal, but an intellectual equal to Candy, in being able to deceive him and maintain a stronger veil of dignity in their dealings. It's only when the house slave sees how Django's wife reacts to seeing Django when he's found out. Again, this person is wrong. Yeah, that's an insane take. Yeah, there we go, censorship. I mean, earlier he said that Django Unchained should be criticized out of existence. So him saying it never should have existed in the first place isn't off base for him, considering he already said that people should criticize this movie until it ceases to exist, basically. Did he just say he wants Django to take over the plantation and the slaves as their new owner, as he had all the stuff Leo's character owned? I don't think he wanted Django to, like, take power over the other slaves. I think he wanted Django to, like, single-handedly free everyone, is what it sounds like. And because Django, the only times he ever did anything, according to this guy, was when he got permission from the white guy. He sees it as not a real character, right? It all boils down to, I hate the movie and it shouldn't exist because a white man made it and they say the N-word, basically. Basically.
The truth is, some stories are not yours to tell. Unless you're willing to step out of the limelight as a white person, you aren't equipped to tell a story about a Black experience. However, if you are willing to put your own ego aside, well, then you can go ahead and make Blazing Saddles something great. This is the last time, I promise.
What does he mean by that? What does he mean by, like, the white people put their ego aside to write Blazing Saddles? I don't... What?
But it's because what Mel Brooks did as the director was ask, what is a pain point for the Black community? What kind of films are they specifically excluded from so that America can get on with the business of telling grandiose narratives about itself? What would it mean if white people use their privilege to do...
He's unironically arguing that Django wasn't enough of a Mary Sue, therefore the film is bad. Imagine having character development in your film instead of the character just being able to do absolutely everything immediately. Can you imagine? You're not taking me alive, millennials. Blazing Saddles was co-written by Richard Pryor.
What was needed rather than what would make them feel exceptional. And the answer, I think, is pretty cool stuff. We would get pretty cool stuff.
He understood that if white people used their privilege to do what was needed rather than what would make them feel exceptional, things could be pretty great. Is he implying that Mel Brooks only took on Richard Pryor for a Black perspective and not because Richard Pryor was both a great comedian and great actor? Is that what I'm supposed to get from this implication here? What the fuck does he mean by this? You can help but don't feel good about it. Yes, ally. Shut the fuck up and do ally things. That is his implication? That's insane, dude.
That said, just like Sheriff Bart, we don't have to wait to be given permission to seek our own liberation.
I feel like that's a false equivalency, right? Because, like... I feel like that's a false equivalency because Blazing Saddles and Django Unchained were trying to show two different things. Were they not? Working at SBI, it imagines itself as Richard Pryor. He means Tarantino should hire me. These people end up, like, falling into positions they have zero fucking business being in, and it's absolutely insane. Pryor was the token Black on the writing team. Tell me more, sweet baby employee. Bart was going to be hung in the beginning of the movie. What's funny is Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor are very good friends. This guy knows nothing. I know. Like, it just seems crazy, dude. The majority of this is just false, not even false equivalency.
So a couple words about the road ahead before I close. As one game dev of color to another. The reality is that almost all of us exist and are working on problematic things with problematic people and
They're working on problematic things with problematic people. See, they're trying to make your game better. You need them.
Problematic environments. And so the approach we might have to take for a while is one of harm reduction. I've talked a lot about my love of a certain Western about a Black gunslinger and his dashing, misanthropic white sidekick as they give a bunch of racists the comeuppance they deserve. But the fact is, while Blazing Saddles is a triumph for me, it is an abject failure at portraying its indigenous characters. And it fails because Brooks made sure to interrogate his bias and privilege in relation to Blackness, but he didn't offer the same respect or care to the only people who can, in my opinion, truly transform Westerns as a genre. So just a note, if...
Wait, hold, I need to rehear that. What the fuck?
Western about a black gunslinger and his dashing misanthropic white sidekick as they give a bunch of racists the comeuppance they deserve. But the fact is, while Blazing Saddles is a triumph for me, it is an abject failure at portraying its indigenous characters. And it fails because Brooks made sure to interrogate his bias and privilege in relation to blackness, but he didn't offer the same respect or care to the only people who can, in my opinion, truly transform Westerns as a genre.
So because Mel didn't include any Native Americans on the writing team for Blazing Saddles, the movie is an abject failure because he only recognized his white privilege in relation to black people, and that's why he allowed a black person to write on the script with him, because their perspective would have meant more than his, but he didn't put enough of his ego aside to also hire a Native American. What the actual fuck is happening? No way he's complaining it didn't do enough now. No way, dude.
So just a note, if there are any Indigenous folks who are watching this and would love to write a talk of their own from their perspective, but need a little help, hit me up.
Why would a Native American need your help as a black person to write from their perspective? Doesn't that just kind of destroy the last 26 minutes of your insane fucking rambling? What did you mean by this?
Be your Waco kid.
Wait.
So, any Indigenous folks who are watching this and would love to write a talk of their own from their perspective, but need a little help, hit me up. I'll be your Waco kid.
He did say I'll be your Waco kid! What the fuck? This guy is so fucking narcissistic! Holy shit!
So, while I'm coming to accept that we're not out of the woods, keeping the lessons outlined in this presentation in mind has been helpful for me in staying clear on my narrative goals in genre and also advocating for them to others. Because the truth is, when genre is defined so much by feeling, by gut and emotional resonance, we often know what's right, but we need to be able to explain it.
Waco is in Waco, Texas? That is the only thing I can assume he's referring to when he says, I'll be your Waco kid.
She's black.
What a time for that alert!
To those who might not, and those who might not trust us. I've been met with defensiveness, hostility, resentment, jealousy, and worst of all, indifference.
Gee, I can't imagine why people would look at you in that way. And also, I like how he said that worst of all was indifference. He prefers people to actively dislike him than to be indifferent to him. Remember, it's not enough to just not be racist. You have to be actively anti-racist.
But having a framework for my approach has been really helpful.
Waco Kid is the sidekick in Blazing Saddles? Oh, okay. That makes a bit more sense now. I was like, what the fuck? Why is he invoking Waco, Texas? What the fuck does he mean by this? All of us are so fucking brain cell zapped by listening to him, we just completely forgot about the Waco Kid in the movie.
And that's what I'm hoping to pass on. So let's review. Lesson 1, good genre starts with representation on the creative team. The foundations of the project have to...
The screenshot slide, by the way. The screenshot slide? Let's not review.
To be solid. Lesson 2, to make good genre, the emotion of the story and the challenges of it must be known to the author, or else whatever emerges from it will be empty, all flash and gore and no substance. Lesson 3, in good genre, the identity of your characters, specifically your heroes, must define...
This says execution 1, and he called it lesson 3. I feel like the numbering's a little bit different here.
...and their challenges in the narrative, and it must also define their triumphs. Lesson 4, good genre understands that it earns its freedom from knowing its boundaries, and it uses its aesthetic language to honor, reference, and subvert convention. Text and trope are key. Lesson 5, good genre must consider its relationship to power. I think there's also a secret 6th lesson, which is don't do this alone. Make sure you have an accomplice or two to ride off into the sunset with. Good luck doing your murder. If anyone would love to get in touch, you can reach me at talk@SweetBabyInc or on Twitter. Sweet Baby also does portfolio reviews for marginalized folks in the games industry and a little bit of career.
I like how he calls this talk How to Get Away with Murder, Subverting Genre Expectations, because he and people like him do a very good job of murdering any kind of project they work on.
God.
I did not know you made a link on accident.
I'm loving this.
Vivo64, thank you for the 2,000 fucking dick biddies. You like Blazing Saddles because you can defend your fondness of the movie using a Marxist lens or something, is the long story short. Very much seems like it. Guy's kind of crazy. The nicest thing you can say is that he's a dumbass. That's a very nice way of putting it. I'm proud of you. You hated every fucking second of that. Piercings and shiny texture reminds you of Xerxes from 300. Still amuses you of them replacing one form of racism with another. You're replacing one bad behavior with another. It's not rocket science. To them, their racism isn't bad behavior. They have the correct type of racism because they're doing it towards people who deserve it, because those people have systemic power in their belief. Useful paid idiot. The fact that they keep hiring SBI, your pills get even blacker. I would say if you find a company that hires Sweet Baby Inc., right, like just do not buy their product. If they're going to hire these avowed racists who hate video games and who hate gamers and want to put ideology above making a good product, do not buy that product. It doesn't matter how overt their subversion is in a game, right? Like, people try to argue all the time, oh, Alan Wake wasn't really that woke. It was fine. I don't understand. You're still giving these people money. You're still allowing them to do the work that they're doing. Do not touch the shit. Twitch drag livestream and now this today. We're in a torture week. Well, it gets even worse? Question mark? Better? Question mark?